Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
Now, this week, we're following with Instagrammer Julia Dimakos. Now, Julia is also a published author of her book, The Tea Tree Guard or Tea Gardening for Beginners. So let's welcome Julia to our show. Hi,
Hello.
Julia. Hey, how are
Hi,
you
how are you?
doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. Awesome. So, right off the bat, there, why don't you tell us just a little bit more about yourself and your gardening?
Sure. So I am on year 13 now of growing my own food. I started gardening. So I didn't grow up gardening. My parents, nobody in my family ever gardened. And when I had my kids, when my second child was one, I thought that maybe, like, first of all, I was concerned about GMO foods. I was just learning about them, and I was really concerned about what I was going to feed my kids. So we had this nanny at the time, and she offered to help me start my first garden. Her parents had this huge garden on their 300-acre property, so I was excited. So she's like, I can help you start your first garden if you want. I can bring llama poo. So that was how it started. And the reason I started is because I was really concerned about the food that I was feeding the kids. And my kids are a year and a half apart, so I had two, and my son was really, really picky about eating and texture. So I thought, well, if I grow it myself, maybe he can, experience what it is to see it grow, and maybe he can taste it. And so the first thing that he tasted and picked from the garden was carrots. And even though they're, texturally different than something soft like pasta, that was the first vegetable he ever tasted. So it really kind of started from there. And I ran out of space really quickly. We lived on a small little subdivision property initially, and I needed to have more. I was, obsessed with growing my own. I read everything I could. I took all these courses. I just wanted to do all of it. So we found a home in the country. We live on 25 acres, and we started our first garden. And the first garden was 2,000 square feet. That was good for about 5 years. And then I ran out of space. So we expanded to 7,000. So we started from a tiny little one raised bed to 2,000 to now 7,000 square feet. So now I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Plus I have a greenhouse as well. But I think that it's a good size for us. I grow all kinds of things, including tea, herbal tea garden as well.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's, it's a very similar story to me in a sense, is that I didn't get started in gardening until later on. And once you get that in your head and once you start digging in and growing a few things, you get obsessed. And just like you said,
Absolutely.
you want to grow everything at that point, that's for sure. And I did a lot of that. I dove right into as much of everything that I possibly could.
Yeah.
So what were you growing when you were starting out in your first gardens there?
So in my first garden, I grew carrots. But
Yeah.
so the first garden, I had to learn because the first year I didn't know what I was doing. So we just put it in the ground. And in the first year I put in a small, the bed was 16 feet long by 40 feet. Sorry, 16 by 4. And it was against the wall. So it's really hard to get into. But anyway, it was on the
Yeah.
ground, and I put in 6 tomatoes, and I think I did 3 zucchini and peas and carrots and lettuce and beans and all these things I could squeeze into it. And then, of course, because I didn't have any protection and it was in the ground, bunny came in and ate all the greens. So all I was left with really was zucchini and tomatoes. But that was
Oh
fine.
yeah.
The zucchini took over the entire garden. Like, you don't put 3 sprawling zucchini plants in a small space. But I didn't know. I learned. After
Yeah.
that, we had built a raised bed in its place. And then it was a little bit easier and I also, with some learning, I figured out what to do. So mostly it was, the tomatoes were huge. We built a separate tiny bed for garlic, and I had no zucchini. It was too big
Right.
for that space. Cucumbers. I had some carrots. I had a little bit of flowers, because I always like to mix in from the beginning. I always put flowers in all my beds, and just like basics that way that first year. And cucumbers, yeah, like I
Yeah.
mentioned, yeah, that was the first garden. Yeah.
Right on. So now that you've been gardening for several years and all of that, what are some of your favorite things to grow in the garden then?
Okay, well, so I don't want to say what everyone says. Like, yes, it's first of all, it's hard to say my favorite because
Right.
I grow so much of everything. So of course, I love tomatoes. Who doesn't love
Yeah,
tomatoes? I grow 100 plants a
exactly.
year, if not more. So that's my,
Right.
I do at least 50 varieties this year. It's probably maybe going to be 125 plants. I'm not sure yet, but that's like, of course, like I love tomatoes. Who doesn't love tomatoes? But I
Yeah.
really love growing garlic. I've been growing
Okay.
my
Yeah.
the same strain of garlic, excuse me, for over 6 years now. The same strain. So I started it from bulbils, and I just keep saving them and replanting the largest. So I have one
Yeah.
variety. It's a Russian rocambole. It produces huge cloves. That's one of my favorite things to grow. It's really easy, and I love that it's the last thing I put into the garden in the fall, and it's the first
Yeah.
thing to greet me in the spring. It's like it's already there. I already know I have like
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 beds full of it, and so that's really exciting. So I love growing garlic, and I use it all the time. And
Yeah.
nothing tastes better than homegrown, right? You pick it, and then it's
That's
like
right.
translucent in color, and it's so delicious and pungent. And then I also really love growing lettuces. So now that's my
Yeah.
third favorite. So like I have to say all three equally. And I grow all kinds of lettuce, and I love to be creative with them, and I interplant them, and I make patterns and offset shapes, and I love all the colors, and I just love having a huge bowl of mixed salad greens. So those three are my absolute favorite.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So that variety of garlic that you grow, is that a soft neck or a hard neck?
It's a hard neck. So here in the
Mm,
north, hard neck is
nice.
better. Although last year I did
Yeah.
plant a soft neck to see how it's going to do, but it's a
Yeah.
it's a hard neck garlic, and it usually produces. Now I've been growing the same strain for years, so the bigger the bigger the bulbs that I start with, the more cloves I
Yeah.
get at the end. So initially it was 3 cloves, and then it became 4, and now I'm getting 5 to 6. But they're all like really
Nice.
big cloves that equal
Yeah.
to like half a normal sized garlic. They're massive. They're like, they could be, I don't know if you can see that, but they're huge. They just
Right.
become one giant. So you get 4 giant ones or 5 giant cloves in a bowl.
Oh man, that sounds really good. Garlic was Garlic again was one of those ones like we are talking about. If you first get started gardening, you want to grow everything, as you said. And so garlic was one of those ones that I really love. I wanted to grow fresh garlic, but I had a real learning curve when it came to growing garlic because, like with everything else, it's springtime. You're ready to grow, you're ready to do things. So I'm starting to plant my garlic cloves right in the ground, right in the spring, and then I'm finding, during the summertime, as I'm thinking, what's going on? These things aren't really growing very well. I pull them out of the ground and I've got nothing. They haven't split or anything. So I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I really had to dig in and research and learn a little bit more about growing garlic. That you got to get that stuff started in the fall. And like you said, it's one of those really great things when you're pretty much done with growing for your season into the fall. That's when you're getting started with your next year's growing, and you start it with garlic. You get to that in the fall time so that it can
It's so it's so satisfying, isn't it, to have that
yeah,
come up, and
yeah,
you've done all the work before, and there it is. And then it has those stages of harvest that I love. I mean, I harvest green garlic because I grow over 500 every year,
yeah,
so I have extra. So I love the green garlic. It looks like a spring onion, and then I really love
yeah,
the scapes, and they're delicious, and I make pesto with them. And then I love the garlic. So you've got like 3 harvests from one
yeah,
crop that you plant, and I plant mine early November, and it's
yeah,
just fantastic. But have you ever planted it in the spring, and then you ended up with one bulb, like a solid,
yeah,
like a non-split? So
yeah.
those are
That's what I
really
was
fun
getting
too.
first. Yeah,
Yeah, so those are really fun too. And some people like they actually ferment them to black garlic, a single clove, which
okay,
I've never seen before, which is a great idea. But then, like, if you have spares that have started sprouting now from last
yeah,
year, that are in your supply, you can get those in the ground. And if you get them in early enough, they could still split, which I've had that happen before. But then if you wait a little bit and you get the single solid one, those are so fun because
yeah,
you just need one to cook with. You slice the whole thing, and it's like delicious. So it's
yes,
you can kind of, that's not bad either. I mean, it's not good
that's
for
right.
replanting, but it's good for eating.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. You can always, and that's the thing, you can always use them still, whether it's for the bulbs or the greens, so even
right.
if you do start them in spring, you can still use them. They haven't gone to waste as you would think. It's just, you want those cloves and you want to see just that really nice garlic bulb. And that's just something you
Yes.
weren't getting when you're planting them in the spring. Another thing too is, you are growing hardnecks, so you do get those scapes. Do you use the scapes off of your plants as well?
Yes, I make pesto. It's delicious. I mean, you can saute them, you can stir fry them. Some people pickle them. I've
Yeah.
tried pickling them. They didn't turn out so well for me, but the pesto, garlic
Mm,
scape pesto it's unbelievable. Like it's not as spicy as a fresh raw garlic clove, but it has such a
right.
delicious flavor and it's such a bright green color. It's amazing.
It is. Garlic is amazing in so many
It gives
ways.
back so much,
It
doesn't
sure
it? It just
does.
keeps giving
Yes.
back. You plant it once and you get so much from it. Anyway, so it's hard to say like
Yeah.
tomato, garlic, they're both kind of
Yeah.
the same for me.
I garden also over in one of my friends' front yards, and this last fall, he was kind of amazed at the idea that we're planting these bulbs into the ground in the fall, and I'm like, no, this is how you do it. He would, I had to reassure him, and he's just completely amazed right now because looking out his kitchen window, he sees all of them coming up out of the ground, and he's like, look,
Oh,
they're all
amazing.
coming up. So yeah,
Amazing.
he's getting the thrill of growing the garlic right now too for his first time, and it's really kind of cool to see. So out of all the things that you've been growing now, what do you find to be one of the most challenging aspects of your gardening?
So, I've always had trouble with brassicas, like cruciferous brassicas. So, broccoli,
Yeah.
cabbage, cauliflower. Those three have just been the bane of my existence. And I keep trying. Sometimes I take years off and then I get back. This year I'm going to try some cabbage. But it's the cabbage butterflies. And so I don't
Oh,
do a lot of protection in my garden. I have an 8 foot tall
yeah.
deer fence to keep the deer out. But in terms of like covering each bed, I want my garden open. So I don't do a lot of like the insect netting, and I should. But the thing about the cabbage and those other cruciferous plants, they get so big that if the netting sits and touches the leaves, the cabbage white butterflies can lay the eggs through that mesh, and you'll still have
Mhm.
them. And I hate not being able to
Right.
like tend to my garden anyway. So I'm not very good with plant protection, and so therefore I
Yeah.
always get cabbage butterflies that always lay their eggs, and I get worms. So that is just like never, that's my challenge. And I want to produce a beautiful cabbage, and then the one time I had them covered, the damn cabbage split because I left it in for too long and it got too wet from
Oh.
the rain. And then I had a split. I was just like, it makes me nuts. I want to do it, but you can
Yeah.
buy them and they're not expensive. I can buy them from the local, farmer, sells them organic, grows them organic.
Yeah.
I find sometimes it's just easier just to pass on something complicated and use the space
Yeah.
for something that you love, right? So, anyways, but I
Yeah,
keep
that
trying.
it
This year I'm going to try it again.
brassicas are an issue for me too as well, and I don't know, I always seem to have the issue of growing them from seed. So over the last couple of seasons, I have actually just gone to the farmers market and got one of the local farmers seed starts and put starts into my garden. And last year I actually ended up with some pretty decent broccoli. So
Nice.
again, I'm going to try again from seed, and if I have to come down to it to get my broccoli, I'm going to get those starts anyway. Sometimes that's just what you got to do.
You got to do it.
There's a lot of things that I can grow in my garden really successfully, but there's those things that just don't work out, but you've got to have anyways. So
Exactly.
all right. So this last year you became a published author and you
Did.
published your book, Tea Gardening for Beginners. Tell us
Yes.
about the process of putting that book together.
So I was really fortunate. I was approached by a publisher last, so 2 Decembers ago, about writing the book, and I've always wanted to write a book. It was kind of like on my bucket list, my dream to write a book to be published, and I was always hoping to be approached. And so I was approached, which was really great. I didn't have to go out and and come up with a plan and and shop it around. So that was great. And for a first book, it was amazing. And I'd always been growing a tea garden, so when the opportunity to write a tea gardening book came up, it was like a perfect fit for me because I was already doing it. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just it was a really quick process. The book was published within 6 months, and it was out last July. um, yeah, it's been great. So it's been a really great experience having that book published, and I love it. Like I love the book. I still refer to it myself. There's a lot of information on there. Tea, most people think of tea as like black tea. They think of,
Right.
they don't know where, green, white, black, like they think they come from different plants, but they come from one plant. They come from the Camellia sinensis plant. So in the book I talk about how to grow your own. Now here where we live, it's not ideal. Like these plants originated in China and India, where it's humid and warm, and here it's dry. You keep it as a house plant indoors, you've got that, the vents pumping out dry air. It's very dry, it's hard to grow. I did try to grow it indoors. I mean, certain things that I just can't do. But the herbal tea garden is so easy to grow. It's also really great because it has very little pest, if any, pest damage, other than like fruit that I would grow for tea, like strawberries. In terms of the actual leafy or flowery herbs, they're not
Yeah.
affected by pests. So you can grow them anywhere. So it's really easy to grow, and it's amazing to like be able to grow your own and dry it and then be able to enjoy it. The flavor is much fresher than store bought. And it's just a really nice feeling to be self-sufficient in another area of growing your own as opposed to just food. So anyways, the
Yeah.
book covers all of that.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I encourage everybody to go check out that book. And you said that it was a really good experience for you. Do you have any plans to write another book, maybe?
Yes, I would really like to. This is another, that book was on tea gardening. So vegetable gardening is really my baby. That's what I love to do. And I feel
Yeah.
like I'm okay at it. So I would love to write a veggie gardening book. So that's, I have no plans just yet. I'm kind of like building my seed business now too. So that's another thing that I do. And so I'm really focusing on that as well. So there's a lot of things. I'd love to start a podcast. And so these are just like, it's there, but it's on the horizon. Let's just say.
It's on the horizon. Yeah, so
Yeah.
many fun things to do actually when it comes to gardening. Again, not just in the garden itself, but all those other aspects of gardening too. We want to do it all when we really get that passion for growing things.
And I have to say though, like, I used to suffer through the winters. The winters used to be long. Where I live, we have snow on the ground right now, so nothing is
Yeah.
sticking out of the ground. But ever since, like if you get into gardening and you can, start your own seeds, and you can learn and you can do other save seeds and preserve, like you really don't feel the winter. If anything, the winter I find is too short sometimes. Like, can you just slow down? I still have all this stuff to do before I have to start the tomatoes. So it's
Yeah.
actually made the season's a lot easier to go through without feeling like seasonal affective disorder. I don't feel depressed in the winter. I feel like excited,
Yeah.
like this is my time to do all the things I had no time to do when I'm growing. So it's great overall. Like I think it really helps boost the mood, and it's just such a positive thing to do.
Yeah, it really does. That's one of probably the best aspects of gardening, though, too, is that mental change that you get. It's just it really makes things exciting and fun, especially when you have that real passion for growing. And like you said, winters become real short because of all the things
Yeah,
that we want to get done for the next season, and all those things that we get to look forward to. It's just, it really is the brightest aspect of the new year for sure. And
absolutely.
yep, yep. So again, I want to thank you so much, Julia, for coming on to our show here and sharing with us all about your fun projects you've got going on in the garden and talking a bit about garlic, one of my favorite things to grow. So really awesome to have you here with us. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.